Florida clinched a berth in the SEC championship game, but if they want to get to the big time, they have to keep on rolling. They get Vanderbilt this week, and this is your preview. Good to see you, Lauren Shehadi. Dennis Dodd, our college football columnist, here to preview the matchup. Brandon Spike, star linebacker, is where we will start. Apparently suspended a half a game for trying to gouge out the eyes of a Georgia running back. Half a game, Dennis. What do you think about this suspension?
Well, this is the national story of the week, and it just continues to get bigger. On one hand, Urban Meyer really booted this thing. I mean, one half of a suspension is not good enough for this thing. My point is, what if he had actually taken the eyeball out? Would that warrant a whole game? So obviously it's not enough. And to me, it may be Florida football and Urban Meyer's getting a little bit too big for their britches. This sends a horrible message to teams out there. Even at the fact that you have Washaun Ely, the Georgia running back, saying it wasn't that big a deal. It is a big deal, and it teaches a horrible lesson to coaches and players around the country, because this goes on, I think, more than people think. But it has to be cut out. And the only reason it's an issue is because it was caught on camera. I think that's the most fascinating thing to me.
So, Dennis, you don't like the suspension. What would be an appropriate punishment?
I think you start with one game. I mean, that at least sends a message that this won't be tolerated in the future. It sends a message to Georgia that, one of your biggest rivals, that at least there's some contrition on the part of Florida and Brandon Spikes. I know he sent out an apology this week, but I thought the biggest thing in the whole thing was, it wasn't an issue until it popped up on YouTube on Sunday afternoon. Then it became an issue. It kind of shows the viral part of our society, if you will.
So the Gators will play a half without Spikes. Vanderbilt will play a whole game without their starting quarterback, Larry Smith. What do you know about Mackenzie Adams?
Well, I think the fact that he is the backup now, he used to be the starter, tells you all you need to know. Larry Smith had an okay year. Mackenzie Adams will give you he'll be able to move the ball around a little bit, not much arm strength. It's a bad matchup for Vanderbilt against this, even without Brandon Spikes, against this defense.
Well, Vanderbilt hung with Georgia Tech last weekend for even a half before eventually losing. Can they hang with Florida at all, Dennis?
No, this to me is the old Vanderbilt. They're back to being the doormat of the SEC. It's kind of tragic after they had the bowl last year. And I know Bobby Johnson's upset about it. They really thought they were making progress. I think this starts to look like a Charleston Southern score to me. I hate to say that, but Florida's on a roll. They're trying to get to the national championship game. They're not going to let anything stop them, least of all Vanderbilt.
Well, they're trying to get to the national championship game, and they always seem to have a slip-up along the way. Last year it was Ole Miss. Do you see that happening with the remaining schedule this year?
I think people have to look at November 14th at South Carolina. Now, Carolina's on a little bit of a downturn, but that's a huge rivalry game. Steve Spurrier playing his old school. Tim Tebow coming into Columbia, South Carolina. Maybe their last tough game before Alabama, because they're going to play Florida State. I don't consider that a tough game at this point. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the one you have to watch because it's on the road in Williams-Brice Stadium. It's going to be an afternoon game, so that's one advantage for Florida. It's not at night, but it'll be tough. That South Carolina defense, as we've seen, is very, very stout.
Vanderbilt, Florida, 7:15 Saturday. Thanks for watching the preview, brought to you by Tyson Anytizers, the meaty good man snack. For Dennis Dodd, I'm Lauren Shehadi, and we'll talk to you soon.